I'm Dr. Zandra Palma. I am very busy today. It's a Thursday. I'm seeing patients all day and interviewing people in between. But I wanted to take 5 minutes out of my day to just do a post on something I've already talked to a couple people about today, which is good carbs, bad carbs, and good fats, bad fats. A lot of people get this idea in their head that different macronutrients are bad for them categorically across the board. And I think what happens is we kind of pin nutrition advice from whatever era that we particularly got fat and needed to lose weight. So for our parents' generation, my parents' generation, sorry if you're my parents' age, that's like a low-fat diet. I have all sorts of people between 50 and 70 coming in, asking me if eating fat is okay. I got fat in college, so my old school nutrition advice then was that carbs are bad. All carbs are bad across the board. That's not the case. If you eliminate one macronutrient, you will lose weight. Macronutrient, I'm sorry. You will lose weight, whether that's carbs or fats or proteins. For proteins, it's a little bit miserable to do that, but it's called a fasting mimicking diet, and we can talk about that at a later point. But your nutrition over the long term should be pretty balanced in these three macronutrients, but you should be concerned about which ones you're eating. So let's talk about carbs first. So bad carbs are basically grains. I talked about leaky gut in I think the previous post, and you can watch that, but grains can cause leaky gut. So grains are covered by a shell called lectins. Gluten is a lectin, and gluten is probably the worst one to cause leaky gut. And because of that, I see grains associated with cognitive issues, mood disorders, fatigue, weight gain, mainly, energy problems with grains. So if somebody comes in with a significant fatigue history, I know the first thing I'm going to do with them is take them off grains. But I don't think grains are good for anybody. If you're not managing any big health issues and you don't need to lose any weight, I think a little grains that have low cross-reactivity with gluten, like quinoa and buckwheat, are okay. I would avoid grains that have high cross-reactivity with gluten, like corn and oats. For some people, a little bit of that is okay. For some people, an 80-20 approach is more reasonable because they really like them. But just to keep in mind that those are the less preferred starches to have in your diet. The starches that are good to have in your diet, and I advise that most people have a normal amount of starches in their diet if they're doing a normal amount of activity. That's 30 to 35%. If you're doing high activity, that could be as much as 40 to even 50% for real athletes. If you have a sugar processing disorder, diabetes, pre-diabetes, that might be lower. Or if you're trying to lose weight, maybe around 20%, or extremely low for some people who are really on the far end of that spectrum, 15%. But those carbs, we should be consuming out of carbs that we could dig out of the ground. So mostly paleo-type carbs, so starchy tubers, potatoes, sweet potatoes, cassava, which is also called yucca, plantains, taro, beets, yams. Basically anything you could dig up or pick is cool. Nothing you could mill or have to ground up and turn into a baked good. So that's good carbs, bad carbs. Let's talk about good fats and bad fats. So fats are not bad for you. I think it's so funny when people come in, it's kind of, this old school idea that fat makes you fat and cholesterol gives you high cholesterol. No, fats, including animal fats and saturated fats, can be very healthy. So I'll break down the different kinds of fats that I like that are healthy, and then we'll talk about the kinds of fats to stay away from. The kinds of fats that I like: monounsaturated fatty acids. They're great for you, they're great for your skin, they're great for your HDL cholesterol. These are things like olives and olive oil, avocados and avocado oil. There's some in coconut oil, macadamia nuts and macadamia oil, and duck fat, which is awesome for high heat cooking, tastes amazing, roasted vegetables, eggs, and has mostly this sort of monounsaturated fatty acid, so it looks chemically a little bit like avocado oil or olive oil. We can go to the polyunsaturated fats, so omega-3s, from salmon, flaxseed, big cold water fatty fish. Those are incredible fats, incredible for your cholesterol profile, for your brain health, and you need them, especially little kids who are developing and have big growing brains. We all need a ton of omega-3s, ideally a pound of cold water fatty fish a week, or take some kind of supplement like a cod liver oil or fish oil. The next kind of fats are saturated fats. So I like saturated fats for almost all people, unless there's a significant leaky gut picture going on, again explained in my last post. They may not be able to handle saturated fats as well in the short term, but once we fix that, they can handle saturated fats. So these are animal fats, well sourced, of course, so grass-fed ideally, and coconut oil is mostly high in saturated fat. The fats you should definitely be avoiding are omega-6 heavy polyunsaturated fatty acids. So these are industrial seed oils like canola oil, grapeseed oil, soybean oil, which is often called vegetable oil, even though there's no vegetables in the thing. Safflower oil, sunflower oil, palm oil, corn oil, all of these cheap industrial oils that show up in processed foods, they unfortunately show up more than we think in restaurant foods because they're inexpensive, and they're highly inflammatory. Not only do they just break apart in the arteries and cause fires, but they also preferentially take up the enzymes that should be reserved for omega-3s in the brain, and so they really can damage our brain health over the long term, and they contribute to obesity more than the other kind of fats that I was talking about. So that's good fats, bad fats, and good carbs, bad carbs. Enjoy.